Okay, so for the next portion of the demonstration, the presentation, we'd like to have a demonstration for you that really has three principal components to it. The first part is going to demonstrate the day zero automatic enrollment of the Opengear console servers into Lighthouse, and then the deployment of a configuration onto those devices so that they come up in the way that a customer might wish to have them configured. The second part is going to be around the RIMF, the Routed Management Fabric functionality, which is using OSPF, and that feature set really leverages the earlier portion, right? We need that centralized configuration push in order to be able to automatically bring up the RIMF and the OSPF capabilities. And then the third portion is really extending on that and showing how external machine-based configuration systems like Ansible can then utilize Lighthouse with RIMF and OSPF running inside of it in order to be able to provision devices and push configuration down. So just for context here, these are the elements that we have in the demo today. We've got a network administrator with a laptop, could be in the network operations center, or they could be out in the field somewhere, on the road, in a hotel. We have the Lighthouse system, central management software system. In our case, for the demo today, we have it deployed on Amazon EC2, but it could just as easily be deployed at a customer site on-prem or on their own private cloud or something like that. We've got an Opengear 2232 unit, which is in our product management demo lab, connected to quite a suite of different devices. And we've shown a few of the icons here, but there's a whole laundry list of equipment that's connected to it as well. And lastly, we're showing the Lighthouse enrollment portal over on the right-hand side of the slide here. So with that as context, we want to share with you the real-world deployment scenario that was presented to us by one of Opengear's Fortune 100 customers. For this use case, they're looking to us to provide secure zero-touch provisioning of both the Opengear equipment and the managed devices that are connected to it. They typically use a contract reseller or installer to configure, test, and deploy an entire rack of equipment at one or more remote locations. And in many cases, the deployment would be part of quite a large rollout, where dozens or even hundreds of racks might be deployed over a period of several months. Deployments at large scale are more involved, and this is where we feel that Opengear can really offer a way to efficiently help customers bring up a lot of new equipment before the production network is in place. As a network administrator back at headquarters or out on the road somewhere, I would like the contractor to do all the heavy lifting and just get in touch with me when they have installed the equipment and think that it is really ready for me to test. The contractor would power up the rack, the Opengear console server would connect to the public network, the cellular network, and at this point, the console server is able to reach out to the enrollment portal or reach out to Lighthouse, however the customer wishes to deploy it. So that's kind of the parameters here. These are the elements that we have in the demo today. So I'm going to log into the Lighthouse web UI and show you that the Opengear node is not currently enrolled in Lighthouse. Over on the left-hand side menu here, we have a menu option for enrolled nodes. So if I click on this, you can see that there are currently no nodes enrolled in this Lighthouse system. That's all I really wanted to show you at that point. So let's go back to the presentation. So the next part of the demonstration here, what I'm going to do is use SSH to connect to the OM2232 and run a command to factory reset the node. Now this is not normally something that a customer would do. This is just something that we're doing today as part of the demo. Normally they'd be getting the carton out, cutting it open, plugging it in, turning it on, or they've already done that and it's part of a rack. They just power it up and they should be good to go. All right. Okay, so this is the command line interface on our OM2232. I'm going to issue a factory reset command here. It does take a little while to get through the process of removing the old configuration and then booting up and so forth. So we're going to let that run in the background. I'm going to leave that running so I can tell when the node has come back to us. And while that's going on, let's go back to the demonstration, to the presentation here. Okay, so typically what would happen in a customer deployment scenario, they would have a lighthouse that they've already set up.
Actually, about Lighthouse real fast?
Yeah, sure.
So Lighthouse, is that still I have my Amazon instance, my own? Is there any talk? I think someone asks this every time. It's like, is there a talk of a hosted service by?
Sure, a SaaS hosted.
Sure.
Yes, that was part of our thinking last year, and it may be in the future that we'll offer that. What we're hearing recently is that customers are perhaps more inclined towards a hybrid model, where they continue to have and operate their own Lighthouse deployment, but the enrollment portal would be a SaaS offering, right? So that sort of helps with that sort of uplift step during the initial deployment. Daniel, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that point.
It's pretty much in line with what Andy's been. We've actually been expecting this question, and the reality is, we set on a journey about a year and a half ago and set up the teams and all that to go develop this fully, cloud hosted option for Lighthouse. But what we've learned is, so we first asked our customers, like, what is really the need or the driver behind something like that? Why would you want us to do that? And most of the answers, like 90% of what we got, were driven by the idea of transferring the liability of hosting such a solution, everything that has to do with security, costs and all that, audits, onto us. So we understood that. But as we were talking to other customers, it was really a mixed bag of feedback. Several of them were not going to deny it. They were like, yeah, I want that, I'm interested. But really the majority were like, I'm not fully quite there yet. It may come for us. But what we've heard is this approach about having hybrid elements in there that really solve a need that we couldn't cover with what we have on-prem, as long as the final solution is being delivered to the customers, they were fine with it for now. Look, we're not trying to, move away or shy away or create any kind of excuses. It's just the reality that we've engaged with quite a few customers, and we believe that at this time, this approach fits more, checks more boxes, if you will. And just like as we've proven in the past that we're really ready to listen and act on it, if that changes, we're prepared to pivot and to listen. But for now, that's where we are with that. We expect the same one next year as well. We'll see how it goes.
I'll ask again.
Yeah, it's really how it evolves. Okay. I hope that answers. Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a Lighthouse instance. That's well, in the context of the demo, we have it deployed on Amazon EC2. The other element here is the Lighthouse Service Portal. So this is a SaaS hosted offering from Opengear. In order to be able to access the portal, customers would require login credentials, of course. And the basic workflow here is they would log into the service portal, and then we have integrations with our back-end system. So we know the serial numbers of equipment that has been purchased by a specific customer, and we can do all that alignment. I've got a couple of screenshots later in the presentation that can show you a little bit more information about this. But essentially, the workflow at this point is the customer would choose one or more console servers and claim those devices based on the device serial number. So then the installer is on site, they power up the rack. The rack automatically reaches out to the Lighthouse Service Portal using a publicly resolvable DNS name that's baked into the firmware. It boots up and it connects either over the cellular interface, or if the wired Ethernet interface is available, it can use that as well. The enrollment portal essentially sends a block of configuration down to the node, and that includes information about the Lighthouse instance that the customer wants this specific unit to use. And then there are some security tokens and other values that are needed so that it is done in a secure way. The other element in there is the name of a configuration bundle, which the Lighthouse instance will then push down to the node. So the node has its information from the enrollment portal. It reaches out over the public internet to Lighthouse, or over the private internet if the WAN is up.
Is it a special firmware that connects to enrollment, or is it just all firmware? We'll just try and then fail if I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. It's an extra step that's going to be added to the firmware, and yes, if it reaches the enrollment portal and there's no record configured there, it's just going to act as it does today. So,
is this only for the open or the operations manager devices? Or does this also extend to the infrastructure managers?
I'm going to pass that question to Daniel, I think.
Okay.
It's a product roadmap strategy question.
So the way we want to support this is on our newer, more modern piece of firmware, which some of you may know it referenced by NGCS, in the tech kind of world. That's where we plan to support this.
Okay.
We want to focus our developments on that.
Makes sense.
Continue to support the basics, just like with everything on what's older or less modern. But the simple answer is just a newer platform. So
Okay.
for OEMs, however, we do have on the newer platform, the CM, the new CM 8100 that we launched not too long ago, that operates on the same firmware, and that is indeed supported.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the node completes its enrollment in Lighthouse, and then based on the customer setup for the enrollment bundle, Lighthouse is going to push a set of different configuration options down to the node. And this can include scripts, it can include options to set up authentication and user accounts, and a host of other settings that are needed to configure the node. Customers can also configure a node firmware check as part of the Lighthouse enrollment bundle. So what this is going to do is it's going to tell the node the expected version of firmware that needs to be running. And if that's installed, that's great. The node will just continue. Otherwise, it will reach out to a firmware portal, and it will download and install new firmware, and then reboot, and then go back around and repeat the previous 2 or 3 steps. The goal here is to make sure that when the node does finally enroll in Lighthouse, that it has the correct version of firmware installed. So the configuration is done, it's got the right firmware. The node is going to establish a VPN tunnel connection back to Lighthouse. Now, if the customer is using Routed Management Fabric, the enrollment bundle is going to include the settings needed to configure OSPF on the node. So the node applies those settings, it enables OSPF, and it takes 30-40 seconds or so, but at that point, the OSPF daemon is going to be advertising routes over to Lighthouse and also to any other nodes that may already be enrolled. So this is where you get the sort of overlay network effect is in existence.
Do we have full OSPF security options available to us in this? Or are we just assuming that this network is entirely private?
There's sort of 2 aspects to this. So we have our internal network where we sort of manage the settings for that. But there are also options on the Lighthouse side to be able to configure OSPF to connect to external routers. We've got MD5 authentication. We've got some other settings around that. For the purposes of the demo today, we're using OSPF v2. The intention is to upgrade that when we get to the point that we're actually shipping product and use v3. Do you think that's sufficient, or do you think we need more in the security domain?
Well, with V3, you're using the built-in IPsec stuff for V3.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that nobody's plugging into the out-of-band network with something that's going to mess up our OSPF and just kibosh the whole thing.
Okay.
Whether that's OSPF v2 MD5 or whether that's IPsec on OSPF v3, either's fine. I just wanted to know whether that's a component of what you're working with.
Okay. Okay. Does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah.
All right. Thank you. So we've got routes propagated. If we're using the routing management fabric feature, at this point, the connected resources that are on subnets that are reachable from the node, those devices should be pingable. They should be reachable from the node. They're also reachable from Lighthouse because of OSPF, assuming that it's advertised the routes correctly. And they're also reachable from external systems, Ansible or other configuration management systems that may have reachability into Lighthouse. So the way we think this should work, probably there's going to be an external router, right, that is reachable from Lighthouse and vice versa. And then those management systems are going to have connectivity to that router. The customer has the option to set up OSPF between Lighthouse and that external router so that the router learns about the appropriate dynamic routes to reach all of the subnets on the enrolled nodes. So that's the sort of sequence of events here. We've got a couple of screenshots from the enrollment portal. So, there's not a great deal to see here. It's just a list of, named entries. Each row represents an Opengear console server. You can see the serial number there. You can see the Lighthouse address that the customer has chosen to use for it. And then the name of the bundle, and then the enrollment token to add a little bit more security. These are the list of nodes that the customer has claimed. And they get to add them to this view from an unclaimed list, which I think is on the next slide here. Right, so these are devices that we know this customer has purchased. They can go to this view and they can click the plus button, and then it gets moved over to the claimed set. That's the mechanism that allows the node to then automatically enroll in Lighthouse.
Does the naming come from like the device itself, or how is that? Because I would figure if you're taking something fresh out of the box, it's not going to have a nice name.
Sure.
It doesn't have a name. It's up to the customer to enter a value for that. Probably will be a location. Other identifiers would be useful to have there.
The question would be is where would they do that? Like some other screen that we're not covering?
Yeah. I didn't grab all the screenshots, but
That's fine.
sure.
Thank you.
For the enrollment portal, it is relying on for the unclaimed status. Is this tied to any sort of purchasing? So that's pre-populated, or is it relying on the devices phoning them into enrollment portal? How is that?
Both.
Or it's both. Okay.
The way the enrollment portal knows which serial number devices have been bought by a specific customer is with an integration to Opengear manufacturing systems. But then the node presents a record that includes the serial number, the MAC address. You've got other kind of ancillary.
Right, and you do you do a matchup from there, and then assign it to the customer.
Sure. There is a use case where a bad actor that could gain access to the portal could try and grab units that are not actually there. So we're mindful of having some mechanisms in place to stop that. Okay, so let's If there's no more questions, we can check back in with Lighthouse and see how the enrollment process has been proceeding here. Okay. So I'm just going to click the refresh button here. Okay, and we can see that our OM2232L with 192.168.100.10 IP address has completed the enrollment in Lighthouse. We can further check the state of things. Let me see here. Let me minimize this. Okay, we've got a couple of pings running. Okay, this is just me pinging the node. Okay. I've been talking for so long that the session timed out here. So let me just, I'm going to log into the Lighthouse command line interface, just so I can run a couple of ping commands from Lighthouse down to the node. So this is the node's VPN virtual interface IP address. So that's pingable from Lighthouse. And let's just make sure that OSPF has done its job as well. Yep, that's one of the devices on the network. That's another one. Okay, great. So we pushed the configuration down, the node applied that configuration, OSPF came up, the routes got advertised, and everything has converged in the way that we expect. So that's the day zero deployment portion of the demo. What I'd like to show you next is how we can use that with something called the resource catalog. And what this provides us with is a web proxy and an SSH proxy built into Lighthouse, so that we can use these buttons to launch web browsers and an SSH console sessions to be able to connect through to the attached resources. So this is a whole list of equipment that we have deployed on the network. I'm just going to choose one. This is the iDRAC. I just click the HTTP button. So what happened then, this is the Lighthouse web interface. I just click one of these buttons. It launches a new browser tab, and it gives it a URL that allows it to connect through to that device. Okay, so I just logged into the web interface on the iDRAC server here. So what this lets us do is provide access to devices that have been configured in the device catalog without the customer needing to deploy any kind of VPN client onto their laptop. That was a capability that we offered for some years, and customers like that. They like the ease of being able to just click through and connect to their infrastructure, but managing the certificates is a little bit of annoyance for them. So we tried to find a way that we could do the same thing and avoid the certificate headache. So that's what we're showing here. This is all part of the device catalog application, which really just sits on top of RIMF. So there we are, we're logged into the iDRAC. The other devices work basically in the same way. I'm going to probably not log into any more unless there's interest in that, just in the interest of time, because I want to give Matt an opportunity to talk about the machine-to-machine connectivity as well.
So what I'm going to show you guys is just kind of complete the story we were having. We've provisioned the Opengear device, and now we have some devices that need some configuration. Let's say the Opengear device and the switches are up in New Jersey, and we're down in Florida. So we now need to reach in, make some configuration changes, and validate those changes. So in the past, we've done a lot of these, including last year, where we actually showed us kind of similar things using a custom web app last year, and the year before we might have used Ansible. The difference being is we used a client VPN our IP access solution, where you VPN into Lighthouse, then you can reach down into your infrastructure and make these changes. Difference being this year is with RMF is now you can have a clientless piece, whether you have a device that's up in AWS, let's say an Ansible tower or Ansible server up in AWS, or it might be down in your infrastructure or on-prem, where it's going through your core network and you've integrated RMF into your core network with OSPF. And so you can reach in and make those changes using RMF completely out of band of your production network. So what we're going to do now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to just run a couple playbooks. I just have a couple really easy scripts. So we're going to check the version. We're going to go out and check the version of this 3750 switch. It runs the playbook, and this is all going through our RMF up on Lighthouse, through Lighthouse on AWS down into our infrastructure. So in the interest of time, all right, we checked the version. It's good. We don't want to do the upgrade today because it's going to take 10 minutes if you ever upgraded 3750. So the next thing we're gonna do, okay, we got some configuration we want to push. We want to do a host name, maybe set an NTP server, and maybe associate a couple VLANs on the switch. So we run this quick Ansible. These are just simple Ansible playbooks. If you've been at Cisco Live and gone to any of these sessions, everyone's showing this demo. So it's the same type of stuff. So we go out, pushes, saves, and now we can go verify.
That's the router.
Yeah, it's the router.
You remember the password?
PM default.
I think that's right.
Yep. I did. Hit enter a couple times. Yeah. Now we're in the switch.
What's this one?
OG user. And the Opengear. So you can see now we set a host name. We've set a couple associated some VLANs. Keep going, keep going. Associated some VLANs that weren't configured before, and we added an NTP server. Just something simple. It's an easy playbook. But we also want to do is we have a Cisco CSR 1000V, a VNF out there that we want to add a WAN link on GI2. So we have another playbook that we want to go push this configuration out using, again, over RMF. And since we have that IP connectivity now, we are able to get to those devices over our out-of-band network. And there you go. Hit enter a couple times. Yeah, you see, we set the host name. So standard tools, you could do standard tools, or like last year when we showed, you can make your custom tools, Ansible, whatever tool of choice you want to use. It's just to show that, we can integrate with the out-of-band management network with your existing infrastructure. That way you can make these changes remotely without that VPN client like we used to do in the past.
Can you share one of those playbooks? I'm not going to ask you any questions. I just want to look at it.
Sure. Sure.
I don't want to waste your time.
Yeah, go in here. Just go.
Which one do you want?
Go into the playbooks directory. Yep, and do like CSR 1000v.yaml. Yeah, it's just a standard, run-of-the-mill playbook. Any questions?
Not about this part. We were talking about the fact that you're using root everywhere. You guys, what do you have for auth options?
So yeah, so for Lighthouse, you're talking about Lighthouse?
Yeah, Lighthouse.
Dan, do you want to answer?
Like AAD, Radius, are all those?
Yeah, all of those are
Okay.
available, and then we integrate through SAML with identity providers. If correct, it's all the standards. I mean,
Dual factor?
So you said
like
SAML, right?
Opta or correct.
Yeah. So SAML's got your deal factor. Yep.
Is there any kind of fallback to cloth if, let's say, your AAD is compromised?
Yeah, so it's actually the UI. You go in, you can pick like TACAX local, so it can fall back, or TACAX plus local, or TACAX down local, things like that.